In progress.
Well, hello there. I just had something really cool come in and I wanted to share it because I'm probably going to need somebody's help. I'm a little confused, but also very enticed. And I know that there's a lot of information within the synchronicities that have came in this morning. Um, as I was about to prepare a bath, I was going to put on an audio book, and typically I don't get notifications from YouTube. Like, I don't hit the bell for anything in particular. And this one came in as a notification, and it's from the middle book is the channel. And the name of the video is The Dimensional Secret of Helena Blavatsky, The Map Beyond Reality. And typically, I try to listen to audiobooks, but sometimes my mind will take over and I don't really like process the information, if that makes any sense. I hear it or it just doesn't settle in, or one might say, well, that information just wasn't meant for me, or my mind will start thinking about something else. So it's very hard to focus on audiobooks. So either it's the audiobook that I try to listen to, because it was shown to me, and that in itself is a synchronicity, and I try to flow with that, or I'll put on like meditative music or frequency music or something like that. Well, today I went ahead and held on to the synchronicity that came in, and I listened to the whole thing. It was 47 minutes long. Um, And it was so fascinating because it actually spoke on every single thing that I have been experiencing and talking about these past couple of weeks, with the spiral of God, divinity in itself, us being a spark of creation, of divinity, of God, of source, and, that living through us and us through that. We are divinity in itself. And I was talking about how I'm testing this theory of going down into that stillness, into that void, and co creating there. Um, a part of me was like, oh my gosh, like, why would God or consciousness itself or divinity itself want to come and experience this, 3D life? Um, like, why? I couldn't like understand why. And then in the midst of talking to someone, I was like, oh, like that stillness of what I was describing as like isolation and, feeling very pulled away from everything, kind of that in between space too. And hold on. So where was I? Um, talking about the void, and then I was like, yeah, I'm going to test this theory. And I pretty much was like, sitting in that stillness of what I thought at one point was like isolation, some would say depression, compression, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, this is like that in between space, that void, in a sense, to where I can sit here and co create in that divinity and recode or repattern what I'm going to experience moving forward. So I'm in the midst of like testing that, right? And I even went a step further. I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to experience. Well, God frequency, divinity itself, source, what do you want to experience through this vessel? And so that was a really profound experience that I had in itself. Maybe I'll make another video on what that actually was, and how it says it wants to express itself through me or experience itself through me. I feel like the fragmentation was not in a perfection type of way. I feel like consciousness is trying to evolve just as much as we are. We mirror that. Um, and the more that we evolve, the more that divinity is able to evolve, because what I came to with that question of why in the world would God, divinity, consciousness, God frequency want to experience itself in this reality? And my conclusion was it too wants to evolve. And I don't know if you are similar to me and your whole life has been a path walked of wanting to grow, wanting to learn, wanting to evolve, but that is exactly where I have been. And so here we are. That video came through. I listened to the whole thing, 47 minutes long. In this video, now when I first started watching it, I thought it was an actual text from Helena Blavatsky. I don't know much about her, but I know in the esoteric world, like secret societies and stuff, she seems to be like a highly, a high-rated figure when it comes to occult and esoteric knowledge and stuff. From my understanding, she traveled around the world. She brings in and weaves in, kind of like I do, a lot of different teachings, and she has a particular path to that oneness, to that figuring out who you are, to that evolution in itself. So that was pretty cool to learn about her. I am going to grab this book, the Voice in the Silence, I think it's called, because as I began to try to find particular quotes that was in this video, I realized this is like an interpretation of her work rather than from her work. However, when I started looking at the timestamps for the different chapters, chapter 7, which is called The Gray Fringe, is timestamped at 32 minutes. Now, I don't know if y'all know a whole lot about me, but I even have another channel called The 30-Second Gate. 32 has always been about this deep, deep, profound walk within myself, that path of, some say it's shadow work, but it's so much bigger than that. And it's just this cosmic evolution type of number that will always show itself. And I see it all the time. Here lately, I've been seeing it so much. So that was cool to even see that chapter 7 was timestamped at 32 minutes, and it's called The Gray Fringe, which I'm going to play it for you. And it just relates so much to what I'm talking about, in that in-between space, me moving out of that in-between space. In this video, they say that Helena used an anchor, because, you're not supposed to get trapped in the in-between space. But I've pretty much lived there my whole life. So at this point, I'm walking out of it. And I have many times before. And I feel like I myself use sacred rage in everything that I do, in all my creative endeavors. It's like a spark within me. Sometimes I will misinterpret it as, oh, my physical self right here is just angry. But it's actually something very palpable and alive within me, that speaks to me and allows me to move in these motions to help myself in my journey, to help myself grow. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. I think I have it shared. And I hope this works. I hope it's not just silence when I'm playing this. We'll see, huh? Okay, so it's only that chapter, the one that's timestamped at 32.
To 7. The Grey Fringe. This is the place between worlds, where the illusion dies and nothing replaces it. There's a moment in the journey when you're no longer in this world, but you haven't fully crossed into the next. You're in between, no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. Helena Blavatsky called it the Grey Fringe, Not a dimension, not a portal, not a place you visit. It's a zone of suspension, a passage made of pressure, silence, and perceptual collapse, a corridor between planes. And the truth is, you've probably been there. Briefly, in dreams, during trauma, in moments when time shattered and the air felt wrong. Blavatsky described it as an elegant kind of hell, not because it was torment, but because it was emptiness with no identity, no sun, no darkness, just perpetual twilight, where the trees grow upside down, the sky doesn't move, and the structures you see seem familiar, but slightly off. She said it's the place where your inner world leaks outward, where thought becomes space and fear becomes visible. Because in the grey fringe, you don't project onto reality. You live inside your projection. There is no map here, no rules, no language. Only one thing matters, your anchor. Because if you don't have something that pulls you back, you may not return, and you'll wander there, not dead, but forgotten by reality. Blavatsky learned this.
Let me pause it right there. Forgotten by reality. I've spoken about these experiences to numerous people. I cannot tell you how many times in my life it was almost as if I'm in a different frequency code and people literally could not see me. I've often wondered, like, I wonder what in the world I could actually get away with, because the invisibility, I still don't know how to explain it. But I know enough to say that I'm in that in between. I mean, I've had instances where I was standing in front of someone and would say something and they could not hear me. I went my whole life struggling with was termed as selective mutism. Now it's starting to be called reactive mutism. And I've often wondered in my adult life, like, how in the world did I go unnoticed for 12 years by all of these teachers? It's almost like a veil was over me in itself, or that I was in a completely different frequency. And it wasn't every single moment of my life, but I've been there, and there's always a certain feeling inside of me, like a isolation, what I would have termed it, but now I see it as that in-between space, that stillness.
It's the hard way. She wrote that in her first crossing she almost lost herself. Her thoughts began speaking to her in foreign voices. She saw reflections of herself moving without her, and worse. She encountered what she called echoes. These were not people, not beings, but fragments, broken pieces of travelers who never finished their journey. They looked like her, spoke like her, mirrored what she denied. And they all wanted one thing, to switch places, because in the grey fringe, nothing has a stable shape. And if you lose focus for even a moment, something else can take yours. So, how did she survive? She found her anchor, but it wasn't an object. It wasn't a mantra. It was an emotion, sacred rage, not hate, not revenge, but the burning refusal to forget herself. She called it the holy fire of self-presence. That inner fire became her heartbeat, her pulse through the fog, her reason to come back, and it worked. When everything dissolved, when her memories scattered, when time unraveled, and her body felt like smoke, that fire kept pulsing, and the path opened. But she didn't return empty-handed. Because the grey fringe, as dangerous as it is also a library, a living archive of all crossings, all decisions, all timelines. If you listen in the silence, you begin to hear them. Footsteps that never walked this earth. Words you never spoke but somehow remember. Images from lives you never lived, but ache for like home. This is where the multiverse hums. This is where the soul collects echoes. And if you can survive it, you come back not as a seeker, but as someone who remembers. Blavatsky described this place with reverence and fear, because once you pass through the grey fringe, you can no longer pretend. You've seen the machine behind the screen. You've walked the silence between pulses of reality. and you've stood at the edge of your own non-existence and chosen to return. But you don't return the same. You see too much. You feel too much. Faces become masks. Time feels artificial, and the world no longer fits around you like it once did, because now you carry the memory of what lies beneath it all. In the final moments of this audiobook, we'll return to the...
Okay, so yeah, when I talk about the void, I feel like every me, every fragment is there. The echoes of who I ever was across all timeline, dimension, space. Everything is there. Source energy itself. So sounds very, 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 very familiar. It's just me where I'm sitting at now. I'm experiencing that in between space. Now I'm calling it, hey, this that was you going into the void, or even trying to come out of it. Like maybe there's a catching up of the frequency as I'm moving out of it. That's where everything is. That's where co-creation in itself can take place, the recoding or the repatterning. And so I wanted to know a little bit more, and I did find a couple of interesting things. I do want to get the voice of the silence. Maybe that's something I can get and like read aloud. One of the other members here used to post in the Knowledge Vault books that she would share. There's also the Secret Doctrine. So here's a couple of things that I've discovered, because obviously I want to know more about this person and what she actually wrote. Did she term it that way? To my understanding, again, that video is an interpretation of Blavatsky's work. And so I wanted to know, like, what's her terminology? How does she describe these things? And so I wanted to kind of see like what some similarities was, between how I'm using my language and my descriptions versus like, what she has said. Obviously she studied all of these different paths and religious texts and teachings, and gnosis in itself, very esoteric oriented. So I feel like that part of me is like tapping into that esoteric knowledge, and I just want to see like how it relates. And so my spiral of God would kind of be like her path of initiation. I talk about the spirals and the voids, and me also in the midst of testing this agreement with the divine. Hey, this is what I want to experience. How do you want to experience? Like, let's make this happen. So that evolution through the descent and then the re-emergence is how I'm kind of like seeing this, right? Blavatsky in The Voice of the Silence and the Secret Doctrine writes about the path of initiation as a spiral of inner trials. Oh, the lessons we got to learn, where the person descends into silence and darkness. Would that be my void? And as you come out of that, you ascend in wisdom. She calls this path the winding ascent of the ladder. Now, when I think of the word ladder, not only do I see someone painting, but I think of a video I was watching one day on a Kabbalistic teaching, and the way that he was describing it as you are climbing the ladder and you get to a certain level, so to speak, and it's like, oh no, you haven't learned enough. Boom, you fall back down the ladder, the descent. So we have all of these different teachings in all kinds of different languages, interpreted in all kinds of different ways. But really and truly, a lot of us are all saying the same thing. That winding ascent into the ladder. And so she was saying that this progression or this evolution is not linear. It's a spiral of the death and rebirth cycle of self. It's exactly what I'm saying with the spiral. And I think that it's not just a one-time frame that we go through in this life. We rise from the void, we're born, right? And we begin experiencing life, and all of these things are put on us. What we should be, who we are, our teachings, all of our beliefs, our culture, all of these things, our environment has that way of teaching us. And we have all of these things piled on us. And at one point during that journey, we're like, hold up, who am I? And so that can cause that descent as you move into that. How many times have you asked that question and then like started to move into that space of silence, but maybe it felt like loneliness, maybe it felt like the dark night of the soul, maybe it felt like you were going crazy, if you begin to see the difference between the physical body or the emotional impact that it takes in the descent, and start realizing to go within, all of that is within, that void is within. Again, it's not something out here. It's not something it's all within. When people say go within, that's literally what they are saying. Go into that void, go into that descent. See what it is that you want to experience. See what it is that you want to bring forward into this. Who do you want to be beyond all of the mask and all of the teachings and all of that? Who are you in your terms? That's that co-creation state. She says in the voice of the silence that thou canst not travel on the path before thou hast become the path itself. And I feel like that is that realization that we are that ray or that spark of divinity. We have to realize that, because that is where people say, you're powerful, you are so much more than what you know, like you truly don't know who you are. Once you realize that ray or that spark of divinity in itself, as it began to breathe life, as it began to fragment and experience life through each one of us, through all dimensions, through all space and time, you're going to understand yourself in an expansive way. So I kind of feel like that relates her path of initiation, that moment of realization. I also think that how people term the word shadow work, I think it's so much deeper than that. I think it's actually something that is very sacred. I have been doing shadow work really and truly about the age of 14. I started asking myself really deep, raw, honest questions, wanting to know why was I mute? Why did I lock up in my body when I wanted to speak so much? Why was I in that space of silence? I wanted to know me through and through. And so shadow work today has kind of become very muddy. There's a lot of shadow work practitioners, things like that. And the descent itself is sacred. And so Blavatsky says that suffering is an initiation. Now, a long time ago, I would say, well, it wasn't a long time ago because I'm just now repatterning this as well. I would say, oh yeah, all the things that I've been through is for a reason. Like there was a reason for it, there was a lesson, yada, yada, yada. Well, now, as I did descend into that void this last time and I recoded the things I want to experience, suffering doesn't have to be my teacher. And that's what I want to experience. I don't feel that we have to suffer in order to learn. Was it there for a reason in the past? Sure. But if I would have realized this a long time ago, well, I could have learned in a different way. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've learned through love, through my children, through that kind of way that is lighter and easier, but deep and powerful. So, she says that suffering is initiation. I kind of frame shadow work is it's not just healing trauma, but I feel like it's a part of returning to the divine. It's it's a way to assist in the evolution of divinity itself, of consciousness itself. We mirror that. I don't feel like that is perfection, and I don't feel like we are supposed to strive for perfection. I feel like everything we heal and every step forward and every climb up the ladder and every spiral we turn, we are growing and evolving. And that is the same. It's as above, so below. Um, I feel like our growth is essential to creation's evolution. And Blavatsky kind of emphasizes suffering and darkness. You are going to hear my kids playing. And the fall into matter as not evil for sure, but part of the soul's evolution. So the material world is a necessary illusion, like kind of like a testing ground. Similar to what I've thought in the past, like this, some people will say, hey, this is straight up hell, definitely a place that you can climb the ladder with so many different forms of lessons. I am just choosing not to do that through suffering any longer. In The Secret Doctrine, she says, the whole order of nature evinces a progressive march towards a higher self. The Secret Doctrine. I'm going to have to tell them to take it down a notch. Hold on. Hey, Quinley. Hey, take it down a notch, okay? I'm recording. Y'all can go in your room. So yeah, she kind of sees like the descent into this realm into the material plane is like shadow and limitation. Um, as divine in itself. It's not a part of punishment, it's a part of the soul's growth. Definitely how I looked at it for a long time, but I definitely feel like we have the option to change that, to recode it, to repattern. I feel like, and maybe through time, because we think about Blavatsky's ideas, and I do feel like anyone during that time period that was writing about esoteric teachings, they had to kind of code their writings too. And I'm pretty sure, like, I mean, just think about it. I'm pretty sure they held back some things, right? You're not going to say it all during that time. Some other ideas that I came across is like my ideas of like the fragments of the self, multiple timelines, different fragments of us, across time and dimensions. I feel like that's a thing with the experiences that I've had in my life. I could tell you some amazing stories about some encounters with those. Now, in that video in particular, it was talking about, it was saying that Blavatsky's ideas, that Helena's ideas were to merge. That's weird. Sorry, I started staring into my light and I see like letters inside of the light. That her sayings and teachings was to merge with your other soul. Like a multidimensional emergence from another timeline. And when hearing that, I was like, well, I've experienced that. That's cool. But I couldn't find anything in her actual writings that spoke on that in particular. But she did write about the higher self, the personal self, and the one soul shared across all beings. So that one soul, consciousness, divinity, God, source, how many other things could we name it? I just want to pick one and stick with it, but I feel like I have to say them all so that if you are coming here from a God point of view or a source point of view or a creator point of view, then we're all on the same page here. That the individual, she said that the individual is a fragment of the divine monad. This is exactly what I'm saying. We are a spark, a fragment of divinity. Excuse me. Where is our pulse? Okay, I'm back. Take it down like 10 notches. So yeah, whereas I say like a spark of divinity, she kind of says like the term she uses is a ray of the divine monad to describe the human soul as a spark from the single divine source. So that was interesting. So, I wanted to see is this what, I've been tapping into? Is this your knowledge? And I know I didn't like formulate this from anyone else because I don't typically watch things like this, and I certainly haven't ever like latched onto like a guru in the past. So I am open to teachers, like a teacher. I would love. They say when the time is right, your teacher will appear. I would love to have that. But I try to keep things unfiltered. That when I do sit with me, that this information, these feelings, these impressions, these visions, what I'm getting, sensing, and feeling is all, to come up from within me. So this is just really, really cool for me to see. And I'm definitely going to keep diving into her work and seeing what else is there. I'm definitely interested in it. Like I said, maybe I can grab one of those books and we can talk about it. We can talk about it. The feminine as this significant power within each one of us, the divine femininity, is kind of like her occult mother. I frequently, bring forward or tap into fragments within me, the Morrigan. On my other channel, you'll see my creations with the Mother of Morning. I changed my other channel. You can look it up. It's at Mother of Morning. I think the bigger title is the 32nd Gate. Not really doing too much over there, but I intend to. However, that is going to come from a place in that void, the descent, because I feel like because I've had so much experience with the in-between, with that gray fringe, as this video, that little clip we watched, which I hope played, because I've had so much experience with that and I know how to move in and out. And I've also seen myself in such amazing ways work with other people and go into that space with them. I do tap into that energy quite a lot. And I know even in this day and time, people still think that's dark feminine, that's so bad, that's so evil. But I would say that it is more so fierce wisdom. It's a part of that sacred rage. Blavatsky was obsessed with like unveiling the feminine principle hidden in religious texts. So you have figures like the Shakti or Sophia and Isis unveiled as symbols of the occult and feminine power buried by that patriarchal religion, which we still see today. There is a book that she wrote, Isis Unveiled, and I would imagine she brings forward some powerful symbolism within that about the divine woman, the divine femininity, and how that's been hidden. Yeah, we might have to grab that one too. I'm telling you. Um, so yeah, these are just some of the things that I've explored this morning, the synchronicities that have came out. I feel like there's so much more to come with this. If you guys have any recommendations or tell me some fun facts that you know about this esoteric legend, Helena Blavatsky. Am I saying her name correct? I don't know. But if you have anything to share with me or point me in a direction that you think would entice my flame within, share it with me. As always, you guys make sure you are liking and subscribing to this channel. There's so much content being put out right now. I wouldn't want you guys to miss any of it. Yeah. So until next time, stay tuned. That was kind of cute, wasn't it? Bye.